Well, I don't know how well you can see this video. Sure, I'll check it and edit it. I said that I'd talk to you a little bit about what I've been doing to try and get my head round all the grief, all the loss. That's something I should explain, that grief isn't just when you lose a loved one through death or a loved thing. It can be a thing. It can be a loss of a job, a loss of health. It can be a loss of a parent through divorce. Any time when there's change in our lives and we don't get time to get our heads round the change, then we grieve. So grief is an amazingly short word that actually describes a hell of a lot of things that happen to everyone. In fact, there's no one alive, I don't think, that doesn't get affected by grief in some way. Maybe newborns and that, but as soon as they start maybe grieving their mother or the father or their caregiver, and they too are suffering from some form of grief. And it's something that we all carry. So although the known grief description is to loss of a loved one, it's the loss of anything, and it's things that bring us a heavy heart. So I've had a lot of things go on in my life that have brought me a heavy heart throughout growing up and moving, and changes that I had as a child, going on through to adolescence and moving on into adulthood. And the thing is, when no one tells us, no one meets us where we're at or explains what grief is or what's happening, and we just know that we have a heavy heart, then we don't know. And when we don't know, we're confused and we haven't got a clue what's going on, and we just feel unhappy and uneasy and uncomfortable. And we know that we don't know, and we try and find happiness and ways to fill the gap. This can lead to addictions and attachments and all sorts of waves of emotions and behaviours that are all connected to things that we have had and then lost, whether they be parents or friends or jobs or health and well-being. And moving house even brings grief, moving property, moving country also brings about a grief. So we're all grieving. And I'm grieving the loss of my grandfather. I still grieve for my granddad Taylor, for the relationship that I'd have liked to have had. But I also know now that what happens in our lives, it kind of happens. And although we can't change things that actually happen, that are out of our circle of control, shall we say, we can change the way that we look at things. And I've been sitting with the death of my grandfather that I was incredibly close to for a while, a few years I guess. I'm not even sure how long he's been gone. But He's not. In so many ways. Like, when someone leaves and they drop the body and they go on somewhere else, their words remain, their memories remain, the love that you shared remains, and it hurts. But at the same time, there's so much beauty in all of that, you know, and it helps you appreciate more what you have and haven't got, and the time that you did share. Now, as with my grandfather's passing, it brought about another grief too, the grief of the loss of my grandmother, or my nana, because although she's still alive, she was deeply changed by the loss, and she behaved according to her grief, as did my mum and my aunt. And people have made decisions which caused more complex grief. And when people come in and out of our lives, things change, atmospheres change, perceptions change, people act in different ways, people can be pushed apart or pushed together. And in our case, or my case, from my perspective, a choice was made to bring in my sister, who everyone had fell out with, to say a goodbye to my granddad, who, when he was in any fit state of health, hadn't wanted anything to do with her. So for her to then be at his deathbed was shocking for all of the family. And I'm not saying whether it was right or wrong, who am I to judge? But that action of bringing her in and her presence caused a big divide. And then it caused my nana, who always said I was like the third daughter, I was always closer to my nana than my mum, had decided that she didn't want me there. And she didn't want me there because she didn't want Jenny there. And she knew the only fair thing to say was no grandchildren there, so that we all got treated the same, because that's all grief would allow her to think at that point in time, because of her state of mind. So that meant that I wasn't able to be there for my grandfather after that point, or the rest of my family, and I was just in a mess, trying to function, but accepting that that's how it was. So I wasn't there at his passing, and I resented the fact that my mum and my aunt had their husbands there, and I wasn't there. I was so pleased that all the grandchildren had got to say what they needed to say to Grandad. I was also really grateful that he told me that he loved me. And he said that first, before he said it to anyone else. And no one really, I remember the look on people's faces, because I knew what he'd said. But they all seemed to like disbelieve what they heard and kind of dismiss it. But I knew, because we had that connection, that that's what he'd said. I also knew, I could feel what he felt, lay there in the bed, and I could sense because I'd had the stroke not long before he had his stroke. So I knew about the light and the pain and the discomfort and the frustration. and the slurring words and the trying to talk and other things that happen when you have a stroke, all the complexities. So I was able to be his voice and make suggestions for my mum and my aunt and my nana to discuss and then take action on, and kind of be some form of guide to try and help them come to terms with what was happening. But when I wasn't able to be there anymore, that was it. And I couldn't even do it really from a distance. Then my grandfather passed, and I wanted to be at my nana's side, and she didn't want me really. She wanted my mum and my aunt, and her head was, she was trying to make sense of everything and trying to get her head around the fact Jenny had been there. And everyone was having a really tough time. Everyone was grieving, because grief does that to people, knowing that grief has a long-lasting effect. So I've been getting my head round not having the relationship with my nana. Come on, Patty. That I did before. I mean, my relationship after my stroke changed with everyone anyway, because all of a sudden here was someone who didn't look right. People looked at me like I had two heads. And at my grandfather's funeral, bearing in mind I couldn't see at all very well, there was only really my cousin Paul who took me by my arm and led me into the church and took care of me. And other members of the family stared at me like I had two heads and stayed away from me. They didn't take the time to hear me out or see what I was actually going through. They lacked compassion. But they were grieving too. So I held a lot of resentment for the Powitch lot, I'll call them the Powitch lot, for being the people that I loved and trusted growing up, for being they were my peace, my calm, my sanity, my happiness, my happy place growing up. They gave me sanctuary. To them being older and them not really wanting anything to do with me because I was a bit of a weirdo. So I've been grieving those two. And I understand that people who don't understand you, they don't want to hang out with you, and that's fine. And I understand that people only love from their levels of consciousness, and that's fine too. And throughout all of this, I've managed to get a closer relationship with my mother that I never thought possible, which has been a blessing. I've also got a deep relationship now with my father, stepfather. A total deep respect for my cousin Paul that goes above and beyond anything else. And a deep loss and grief for my nan. And I understand that's how it is. I was going through, but the whole COVID thing, that altered things because all I wanted to do was see my nan. And I went to go over and go straight to her. And I'd been isolating, nowhere near anyone. And she didn't want to see me, not even through the window. And that hurt like hell. My aunt didn't want me to stay there because it might upset the neighbours because, you know, people were isolating. And that hurt. But not as much as my nana not wanting to see me, not even through a window. So I figured that this is what fear does to people. It separates people. It causes a divide. Then I was grieving the loss of my aunt, as our relationship was. So I was always more closer to my aunt and my mum. It kind of went my nana, my aunt, my mum. And throughout it all, I now have a close relationship to my mum. And it is. And that's exactly as it is right now. The whole ridiculous COVID lot has caused so much fear, separation, divisiveness, shame and guilt across the world. And that brings about a deep sense of sadness for all what was and now what is, and now still people you know, they're still causing an issue and keeping separate, and it's a really sad state of affairs that even those that name themselves as spiritual and things insist on that great big insist on keeping that great big chasm, that big bloody divide, that crater, and keeping it as them and us and them, and not seeing anyone as a soul, which sucks big time. So I've been sitting with that, and throughout all this time I've had a relationship with someone who said they'd love me forever, and I said I'd love them forever, and that was a thing. But people can never say that we'll love each other forever in that way, because when you speak from a place of lust, you're not speaking from a wisest self or any place of real knowing, but that's your truth in that moment. So you make all sorts of beliefs, you believe all sorts of things, create your own belief systems, make all sorts of promises, and it is all bullshit, you know. Because at one point in that relationship, or any relationship, you stop, you know, all the relationships that I've ever had in my life. It doesn't matter whether it's you and a teacher, you and a sibling, you and a parent, you and a friend. You start off as having some form of balanced transaction, or you feel that you're in a balanced transaction of friendship, and it feels like you're loving and respecting each other, and at some point something stops, you know. At some point something turns off, something challenges the trust, you know, some resentment builds between you, something challenges the communication, And at that point, you either manage to communicate through it, or you don't. And then it's keeping that open, honest communication to move forward, which is easier said than done, isn't it, really? Because communication's difficult, even for the best communicators that I know. Communication can be incredibly challenging and pushes us to really try and remain open whilst being vulnerable and sharing our truth, which is a challenge for absolutely everyone on the planet, or nearly everyone. It's certainly something that we have to be mindful about. So, as I've been coming to terms with the change of having someone there to not having someone there at all, it's been really weird. It's been very different. And in many ways, I've been able to do things for myself, learn things for myself. I've been able to grow into myself, be able to listen to and trust my own body, and really work with what my body's telling me it wants for the first time ever in my life. And that's been such a blessing. I've had the confidence to be able to do stuff, and sure, I've had some rocks and knocks, but my confidence has grown and grown, as has my self-belief, and my faith has deepened in the universe. It's like I threw myself, if the universe could be seen as an ocean, I threw myself in there, and I knew I'd either swim or I wouldn't. I'd just dive straight in, and that was me, going, flowing, trusting the current to take me where I'd need to be. And here I am, living a dream that I'd had since I was a child. And it's truly amazing, and I'm so grateful and blessed to have so much abundance here. You know, many people only dream of this, and here I am, you know, and I've got enough space to share it, and time to share it, and energy to share it. But one thing that I grieve, I've been grieving, is my health. Because looking back, I was a bit like Superwoman. I could do so many things. I could multitask. I could think of one thing and 2 things, 3 things, do another, help everyone, run about, you know, just do so much. And it was almost like I had an endless amount of energy, or spoons for those of us that follow spoon theory. So I had an unlimited amount of spoons. And then with the stroke, I lost so much energy and so much physical capabilities that I was no longer able to, like, my balance is still not right. It's exactly as it should be. But it's, you know, my balance is the one thing that keeps me from getting back on a motorbike, and makes me uncertain when I walk, especially on pathways that I don't know, which is why I tend to keep the same routes. And my memory, but I tend to remember some things and don't remember others. And that's not good for the human negativity bias, which tends to remember all the rough stuff that happens so that we can keep ourselves safe from it ever happening again, which is all very well and good. But when you've got a limited memory bank, and your words and things get mixed up, especially when you're tired, it brings a new perspective to the mix, shall we say. And the pain, the emotional pain that comes with grief, and grieving jobs and the health and the life that we had, and the physical grief and the pain that's felt in the body. And then, of course, the pain that's felt in the body still from your body recovering from what it was suffering from. When your body has the huge changes due to your health. So dexterity. Dexterity is a big one. The amount of walking you can do, washing pots, holding leads, drawing, writing, brushing your hair, washing your hair, getting a wash, driving, your sight. My photophobia seems to have improved considerably, and my migraines too. I used to have 1 to 2 a day where they hurt so bad I couldn't move. Now I don't have that. But I still have little blips and things here and there. And having Bear has is it exasperated? Is that the word? It's kind of made the things that hurt. It's pushed me more. It uses up more energy. I've been spending more time angry, resentful, less mindful, caught in the trance of unworthiness, where I've been really grumpy, reactive, snappy, periods of sadness. I needed to change. I needed it for me, I thought, I don't feel comfortable, this isn't right, I need to alter this. And in life we have to take responsibility for ourselves and how we are and what we're doing. And that's what I've been doing. I try to turn inward, to take responsibility for what I can control and let go of what I can't. I've been trying to feel into my pain, because our bodies, our loyal consorts, they carry so much pain, they carry so much grief. Everything's held in the body somewhere. So even when we think that we're past things on a mental level, it's usually somewhere in the body too. So it's important to be able to try and sit with that. And therefore I've been sitting when I could, and that's another reason for resenting the bear, because I spent so much energy with him I wasn't even managing to rest enough to be able to meditate. But I've been waking up during the night. I've been using that time to meditate and get my thoughts together. I decided that I was going to apply mindfulness. So instead of getting up and being dragged off on a drag round not even the block, it's an hour's walk, I would try and find a way of feeling in and softening to the pain. So I'd soften to the pain, I'd soften into the sensations, I'd try and notice more and raise my awareness of the walk as it was happening. And at the times when I was in bed and I was hurting, instead of pushing away the pain and being so cruel and lack so much compassion for myself, I started embracing that pain and those feelings and that how it was and how it is. And when I wake and I'm the physical pain in my body, in my back and my arms and my hand, my face, my feet, my legs, I can lie there and I'll notice how tense I am, how screwed up. When I say screwed up, it's like so tense, so screwed up in my body. Slowly, if I concentrate on the breath, I can breathe and bring the breath into the places and soften around the pain. And it's almost like inflating, gently inflating with the breath, that part of tension, and brings so much ease. And as you concentrate on each part of you, it brings a whole new relationship to the pain. And instead of being pain, it starts being tension or tightness or heat or pins and needles. Some of it gets colour, some of it, it would be really bizarre to try and draw a picture of it. But you can feel into things and you can just try and not resist it, because that doesn't help at all. The more you resist something, the more problems you cause yourself, the more tension, the more you're suppressing something, the more you're not allowing it to be. But by allowing it to be there and welcoming it and giving yourself some love and self-compassion by raising your awareness and breathing into it and just showing yourself some mercy, like, shit, your hand hurts, okay, it's all right that the hand hurts, it's no wonder the hand hurts. It's been tightly trying to hold on to the lead to stop bear running off. It's been pulled and tugged at, and it's cutting and washing and cleaning all day, and it's doing all these things. It's one of the most hardest working parts of the body. It's time to give it some love and just be there with your hand and just breathing and allowing it to be and giving it that acknowledgement and gratitude for being your hand and carrying on, going when everything else isn't really working like in the best favour, and it's still going, and you just slowly do that with each part of you. The breath is amazing medicine. And that loving awareness and the compassion we can hold for ourselves is amazing when we take the time. and the amount of tension and things that we notice in our bodies. And as we notice all these things in our bodies and we let go of the tightness and the tension, we're able to feel differently and hold ourselves differently. It's like our bodies, it's like our body's almost like a flower that wants to bloom, and as we're letting the tension go, it's opening up and opening up and opening up and revealing its truth, and it is amazing. And the same when I, walking the dog now, walking bare. Just breathe. Notice the ground beneath my feet. Feel the wind against my face. Watch the trees. See the flowers. See the mushrooms. Watch the clouds. See the sun. Feel the warmth of the sun. Watch the shadows and the dance of the trees and the leaves. And try and be present wherever possible during the walk and during the rest of the day. Now, as I do that, I'm able to be more patient with Bear, more patient with Batty. I notice that I hurt less on my walks. And although I'm very tired, I'm able to achieve more and be grateful for more. And I don't beat myself up for not being able to do things, which is like total acceptance. And that has come a long way. So I have a lot of it processed. Now, soft belly helps considerably, and forgiveness. So breathing into the belly and really loosening up the belly and allowing, whenever I notice myself in my belly to be tight, or my chest, because when we're in fight or flight, one of the first places to tense up is our chest and our belly, and we're breathing from the top here instead of down near our belly. So when we notice it, we can breathe into our belly and, quickly, just even for a few seconds, soft belly, soft belly, soft belly, soft belly, soft belly, soft belly. And we can let go and breathe out that tension and just be back in the moment, because pain can take us out of the moment. And when pain takes us out of the moment, we're so caught up in that pain and that resistance to pain, and the frustrations, so the emotional pain with the frustrations and some of the shame, and so we come back to the breath. And I suppose they say sometimes, inhale the good shit, exhale the bullshit, We just let it go. And letting it go is only right, I believe, to let go when we're ready. So before we can let go and actually let go, we have to let it be. And sometimes we can let it be without letting it go and just come to a complete acceptance of what is. And it's there we find a way to come into forgiveness of the self and forgiveness of others. So at the moment I'm doing a lot of forgiveness work and a lot of breath work and softening up. And all of it takes me back to the present moment where I can enjoy being and not be cross when I'm doing, and not be cross when I'm not doing either. So I guess that's where I'm going to leave it for today. But I want to just say that as a medicine woman, I choose that role, if you like, that title, because I'm a therapist, I'm an energy worker. I don't call myself a healer because only you can heal you. No one else can heal you. There's a lot of people out there who are healing others because they haven't done the work on themselves, and they're trying to heal what they can see in others as a way of healing themselves by default, and they get triggered and they get all sorts of stuff coming up and they end up in a mess. But as I've worked on myself for a long time, in many ways, I'm able to practice what I preach, if you like. Only I try not to preach. And I just try and meet you where you're at. I just try and be with you wherever that is. And if that's in pain, if that's sitting with suicide, if that's sitting with suicidal thoughts, if that's sitting with suffering with some kind of illness or anything at all, like any bereavements, then I'm here, and you don't have to be alone. And I don't do it to work on myself. I just do it to hold space for others. I know what it's like to not have people hold space for you, and that sucks. But I'm not at the stage where I need people anymore in my life. I used to be at that stage where I needed people, desperately needed to be loved and wanted and accepted. But now I love, want and accept myself, and I just work on me. And that's all I need. It's all I genuinely need, to just keep working on me. And I keep loving everyone with as whole a heart and open a heart as possible. And sure, it gets hard. It gets tough sometimes. But that's okay. And I'll continue working on me. Very likely until I die, and very likely in the next lifetime, and the one after that, and the one after that, I'm sure. And that's okay too. So thank you for bearing with me as I share all this today. And if you do want to reach out and explore anything, then I'm here. And I would be honoured to sit with you and join you on your journey home. That's home to yourself. Namaste.